Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. If you saw my video a few weeks ago, I was making up some hook storage wallets because I found it easier to put my hooks in those rather than use those plastic boxes which are about so long and have the two stumps to put hook lengths on. I could never actually get the hook lengths to exactly the same length. So today I'm going to try and rectify that. I've built this, which is a hook tying machine, and it really does do the job. I can get things accurate. I've got mine accurate to within 1mm. I tie my hook lengths up to 8 inches or 200mm, and when I did the test on it, I've got it accurate to 201mm, which is good enough for me. If you have to alter it to accommodate those plastic boxes, it's an easy thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you first of all how it works, and then once I've done the demonstration on how it works, I'm going to go through how I built it step by step, warts and all. I really wasn't absolutely sure when I started the thing whether it would work out or not, but it's here and you're about to see how it works. So a quick overview of the parts. We've got the headstock, which contains the Matchman hook tire. You don't have to use the Matchman, I just like it, so that's what I used. If you want to use a Drennan or something else, it works equally as well. This slides up and down on the rail. You've got a stop here to keep it level and in one position, and then you've got the tailstock, and this is what determines the length of the hook length. Really simple, not much to it at all. I think the best thing now is let's just get on with doing the demonstration. Take your hook, insert it in the hook tire. For the purposes of the demonstration, I'm just going to use this braid. If I used monofilament line, you wouldn't be able to see it because it's obviously all white here. Basically, push the headstock up against the stop, put the tailstock up against this marker here. Now I've set this up for 8 inches, which is where I like my hook lengths to be. Just tighten down, and then put the loop over the top of there, cut your line to just past the end of the hook tire, and then let's start. I'm going to do 8 turns. I think that's 8. Take it around the post and then pull the headstock back until you've got a lock. Then you could release and you can pull the remaining section out. So all you've got to do now is tidy up, and that's an 8-inch hook length. Now that is 8 inches, trust me. At the end of the video you'll see me actually using this on a ruler to show you it's within 1mm of 8 inches. And that's how simple it is to use the new hook tire. So that's the demonstration on it, folks. For me, the best things about it are easy to use, it's efficient, it gets the lengths right, but the best bit for me was that it really didn't cost me anything. I already had a Matchman hook tire lying around. I had a piece of scrap wood and a few screws, wing nut, a couple of bolts, and that was it. So even if you had to go out and buy these things, it wouldn't cost a fortune. So I suppose the only thing left is to literally show you the tutorial on how I made the thing, and here it is. So to start the project, I had to decide what material I was going to make it out of, and I had a look at the scrap heap behind me there, and I came up with this. It's just a scrap piece of chipboard which is melamine faced on both sides, and the reason I chose it is because I want to slide the headstock and the tailstock up and down, and this gives me a nice slidey surface. Could have probably used something else like MDF or possibly plywood, but I've gone for this because it was there and it didn't cost me anything. It's taken me about 10 minutes to make these cuts and get the general idea set up in front of me. I've got 2 slats here. I've got a piece of wood for the support, Same at the other end. This is the headstock, this is the tailstock, and this piece of wood here is just there, so if I need to I can put a support underneath there. That's as simple as it is really. Now obviously this is far too long for what I actually need, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this as my basic sort of a point, and then as I look at the thing I'm going to think, well, this needs to be a bit shorter by this much and this needs to be shorter by that much, but I'm just going to eyeball it. I'll give you the measurements once I've done, but for me just eyeballing it for now is going to be good enough. So the first bits to be assembled are the two rails. As you've seen, I've got these little pieces here which will form the ends, and what I'm going to do is put them together like that. Now before I actually get to do that, you'll notice I've just put this old piece of scrap wood up against here like that, so it's nice and square. That means I can push that up against there, lock it against it, lock that against it. That will now be square to that. I'm using 25mm screws, and the reason for that is that the wood is 16mm on each piece, which makes 32, and therefore I don't want to go all the way through. 25mm does exactly that. That's the first piece on and square. Same at this end. However, I don't know how long this is going to be, so I'm going to leave that for a minute just while I think about it. So having given it some thought, I've decided that I am going to screw this end piece on for now. If I decide to make this shorter, which I probably will, I can always either take this off or just cut myself another small piece out. The reason for this is that this is going to form the rails and the centre provides the slide. Now I'm going to use these 6mm bolts, and the issue is that I need them to slide freely up and down in this channel here. But to do that I needed to have a reference marker, because then I can put this one in and lock it down. For example, if I put one there and one there, that then gives me exactly what I need, almost. Don't want it too tight to fit, because if it doesn't move, that's no good. So what I'm going to have to do is to just give myself just a fraction of movement on there, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that just yet, but I'll get back to you on that one as it occurs to me. We have a plan. Two pieces of cardboard which is just taken out of the drawers behind me, and what I'm going to do, these are about a millimetre thick, I'm just going to insert those there and there. The idea being that when I squeeze them together now and screw down, these are going to give me a little bit of play in the system. Now bear in mind that at different times of the year wood, including particle board, can shrink and expand slightly. So I'll give myself a millimetre just to be on the safe side. Shouldn't have any effect on accuracy, just purely there so I don't have to disassemble and rectify any issues. I suppose the next thing now then is just to screw these ones down. Okay, so that's the support tracks in place. If I take these out now, and we'll do the acid test. There we go. Nice and smooth all the way up and down. Really easy way to do it, no measuring involved. Next I've got to fit the headstock and the tailstock together. But before I actually do the screwing on that one, I'm going to cut a couple of holes, and I'll explain why once I've done it. So that's the holes drilled. Now I've drilled 5.5mm holes, and I know I said before that these are 6mm, so you're thinking, well, why on earth would he do that? You've got to bear in mind that these ones are going to come through here, through that hole. I'll just put it on the back for now, and what they'll do is they're just guides. So because these are 5.5, when I use a tool to screw them in, like so, they're screwed in. It means I don't need a nut on the other end. The only one I have drilled a 6mm hole in is at the back here on the tailstock, because that's going to have, put it that way around, that's going to come through and it's going to have a wing nut. That then allows me to tighten this one down. This one doesn't need to be locked. It can just slide forwards and backwards until it reaches a stop, which will be about here shortly. So I've turned the machine around to see how it's going to work, and to see what sort of height I need the hook tire at. Now I made this here about 150mm originally because I didn't really know quite what I wanted. But looking at this, I think I'm going to want it to be about here, so just as a guesstimate, I'll put a mark on there. And that's about the height it's going to be. So I'm going to chop off a piece out of the top next. So the only other thing I've got to do before we do the final assembly here is to drill a hole in the headstock to accommodate the Matchman hook tire. Now this hook tire is something like 12.5mm in diameter, and so if you drill a 13mm hole, that will accommodate it quite nicely and give you a little bit of play around the outsides. For my purposes, I'm going to be using this quite a lot, so I've just taken a piece of 16mm metal tubing, aluminium tubing, and I'm going to drill a 16mm hole, so that just creates a metal face for it to rub against. I've drilled the hole for the hook tire. I've cut a little piece of metal to go into it, and I'll glue that into position shortly. And then obviously the hook tire goes in like so and just twists around. So having got that done, I can now go ahead and assemble the headstock itself. I've assembled the headstock, just 2 screws into the back, through into the base. Now those ones I've made 35mm long because it might take a little bit of pressure on there, so you don't want to use something like 25mm screws in there. As I say, I've already glued in the insert, got the 2 holes here. These are 5mm, sorry, apologies, 5.5mm. And then all I've got to do now is turn the base over, take one of these, push it through. Now I have already drilled through these 5.5mm holes with these bolts just to start the thread, so hopefully when I come to do this, there we go, just to make it a bit quicker. Just going to nip it slightly tight, not much, just a little bit. Next one. And again, just nip it up. I'm just going to slacken this off just a fraction. A bit more. And hopefully, there we go. That slides quite neatly up and down. To fit the hook tire to the headstock, I've drilled holes in the side of it, and the idea is that I put that in there, pin goes in here, another pin on this side. Can be a bit tricky sometimes. There we go. So as far as the operation goes, that's it. You can trim off the ends of the pins if you wish, but not really necessary. Oh, one final thing I did, for anyone that's got arthritic hands or any other issues, I drilled a hole in the back of the thing here and just took a nail, so if you want to, you can just do that, rather than having to use your fingers. You may or may not use it, but I find it helpful sometimes. Now I've assembled the headstock and I know where the point of the hook tire is going to be, I can now cut the tailstock to suit. As I said to you right at the start, I didn't know how tall it was going to be, so I just cut myself an extra long length. So what we'll do is take a mark to about here and just cut it off at that. So just to check the tailstock then, I put it on here like so. There's going to be a nail that comes up here which takes the line, so that gives me enough clearance. I think that's fine. So that's the tailstock put together. All I have to do now is to get the 2 bolts in. Now remember, the 5.5mm hole is at the front as the guide and the 6mm hole is at the back. So as before, take your bolt and washer, push it through and just do it up. Keeping that fairly loose again. Just nip it slightly and then slacken off like that. So the final operation is going to be putting the bolt through the back one. Again, washer, push it in. But for this one, we're going to use a wing nut and a washer. Washer on, wing nut on. There we go. And that then locks the tailstock down in place to give you the distances. Only one more thing to do, which is to put the nail into the top of the tailstock here. So because this is chipboard, I decided rather than just hammer a nail down, I was going to just drill the pilot hole down there at 1.5mm. The nail I'm using is about 2mm, so I may even be able to push it in. Almost. But all I do now is I'll get a hammer and just knock that into place so it's just slightly above there. That would seem to be right, and then we'll give it a go. For the purposes of testing a calibration, I've clamped on this scrap piece of wood here so that the headstock clamps up against it. I've put a hook in and I've got some braid here. Rather than using line, this braid is a darker colour, so I'm hoping you'll be able to see this more clearly than line. I've tied a loop in the end and I've made it about the same length as the overall length from the pin to the end of the hook tire. And if I put this on, pull it around, and now let's see how we go with tying the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Take it around the back, push through, and then pull back until the knot is more or less tight. At that point you can release, you can take off the pressure there, pull the whole thing out and just pull the knot tight. Everything looks pretty good, comes off the front, just pull it up like so, and there we go. Now that actually has worked really well, very pleased with that. So we're almost there as far as the manufacturing goes. I put a little mark where that little block was that I'd got clamped down, and I'll just use that to give me a reference so I can clamp the actual block down. using the 25mm screws again. Remember not to go all the way through. And that's about it for the manufacturing, guys. So the only thing left now is calibration. Generally I like my hook lengths at about 8 inches, so I'm going to calibrate it to that. Now obviously from there to there isn't 8 inches, and anyway I've got to pull that backwards, so just measuring the two wouldn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do is tie a hook and measure it, and then I'll show you how to get the exact distance you require. Okay, so I've tied the hook, and having just put the tailstock into any old arbitrary position, having tied it, I've measured the hook from the end of the loop to the bend of the hook. I've got 147 millimeters. So what that means is if I want 8 inches, which is 200 millimeters, I've got to add on 53 millimeters. So if I take this back by 53 millimeters to sort of here, and then mark it, when I tie the next hook, that should be 200 millimeters or 8 inches. And now the absolute moment of truth. Put the loop onto the end of the ruler, and there you go, 200 millimeters, 8 inches. Perfect. So there you go then, folks. This is my new hook tying machine. Very simple, very easy to make, and of course no real measurements at all, just all done by rule of thumb, eye and judgment. I may cut off this piece at the end, I really don't know yet. I think I'll use it for a short while and see if I do need any longer lengths, and we'll take it from there. But basically, this is the piece of kit that I've made. It's taken me a couple of hours to do. Give me quite a lot of enjoyment and fun. Hopefully it will for you too. So, that's it for this video. If you liked it, click the like button as usual. If you want to subscribe, you know what to do. You click that button too. So, till next time then, see ya!